Welcome to our witnesses. I want to just make a quick note that struck me when I was looking at the background of each of you this morning and what you'll contribute. The 5 witnesses today who will discuss rural and remote energy, they come from 5 different time zones across the country. We used to have 5 in the state of Alaska, but we decided to be more efficient, and we're down to just now 2. But we have folks from 5 different time zones. So it's a group that can cover a lot of ground, both literally and figuratively. Robert, Mr. Venables, I don't even think the sun's up in Juneau yet. Hopefully it'll be a good day there. But Mr. Lyons is from Washington State. Mr. Hardy joins us from Montana. Mr. Greek, North Dakota. And Ms. Plowfield is representing home court here on Eastern Time. This diversity is a reminder that we have rural and remote communities all over the United States. And we're here today to focus on their energy challenges and opportunities in the hopes of moving the ball forward on more affordable, more reliable, and increasingly clean energy for all of them. Now, depending on the definition of rural that you adopt, anywhere from 15 to 20% of our nation's population lives in a rural area. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, that totaled 60 million people as of December 2016, with nearly 75% of our national landmass considered rural. In Alaska, we paint a pretty extreme picture. We say it's a beautiful picture, but when it comes to rural, it's more than rural, it's bush, and rural takes on truly a different connotation. We have 234 communities that are outside of our rail belt area. This is an area that is a road system up, down, kind of in a triangle. But outside of that rail belt, we have somewhere between, we've got these communities that comprise maybe 20 people. Some of the largest communities that are off rail belt are about 8,000 people, so very small populations. Just over 3/4 of those communities are not accessible by road or the marine highway system or ferry system. So when you put it in context, about 80% of the communities in the state of Alaska are not connected by what folks down here would just assume you have to be connected by road, because if you're not connected by road, how do you get anywhere? How do you do anything? Well, it makes things just a little bit more expensive, a little bit more complicated. By one measure, rural Alaskans pay more than twice as much to heat their homes than folks in the lower 48. Electric rates are so high that the state has implemented what we call a power cost equalization program. This helps subsidize energy costs. We have discussions all the time about, well, what do you pay in the community of Haines for your energy? And the discussion is not so straightforward, because if you're residential, and I don't think Haines necessarily is, are they available for PCE? Okay, so if you're residential, your rate is going to be able to be subsidized through power cost equalization. If you're a commercial entity, the little barbershop, you don't have that. So you can be looking at some pretty considerable differentials in terms of your rates. We've got just under 200 PCE eligible communities. Their average residential rate is 58 cents a kilowatt hour. Now you compare that to, like Vermont, I understand it's about 15 cents a kilowatt hour. And so what you have is you have these communities that are relying on costly diesel fuel for heat, for electricity. The cost of the energy carries over to everything else that they do. And it's not just for those that are off the road system. I met with folks this week about what we call our road belt area. And within that road belt area, these systems are not connected necessarily to one another. Little community of Chitna is paying over $1 a kilowatt hour, and they're on the road system. Communities like this are just not sustainable, and I think we recognize that. In Alaska, Montana, Hawaii, North Dakota, any number of our states, too many people are living on the edge of what Senator Tim Scott and I call energy insecurity. There's real trouble in too many households when already expensive energy bills keep piling up. I've told the story many times, but I was in a interior river community up off of the Yukon River, having a little town hall meeting. A woman came up to me. She has an infant in her arms that she was providing foster care for, and she gave me a receipt, and it was a receipt for $50 for 5 gallons of home heating fuel. And she said, I had to make a decision as to whether or not I was going to buy heating fuel to keep the house warm, or whether I could afford to buy baby formula for the baby. And she says, I'm just going to have to stretch the baby formula because it's too cold right now in Antioch. And you know, you look at that, and I carried that receipt around. I still have that receipt because it's a powerful reminder of the trade-offs that far too often our families have to make. Now, where there's a challenge, there's also opportunity, and that's part of the reason why we're seeing innovation to bring costs down in many of our rural and remote areas, often by adding locally available resources such as hydropower, wind, geothermal, or woody biomass onto our microgrids. I think we all recognize that rural energy is a priority for so many members on this committee. I think we all recognize how important it is to tackle the challenges that these Americans face through smart, effective policies. And that's why so many of us support the state energy, the LIHEAP, and the weatherization assistance programs. I think we know full well the imperative of these programs for so many families. And it's why so many of us are working on legislation to boost and improve rural energy systems, and those include the broad bipartisan energy bill pending on the Senate calendar. Senator Cantwell and I are committed still to advancing this. We've worked hard on this as a committee, and I think those provisions will benefit our remote communities. One specific example of that in our energy bill is the effort to open DOE's loan guarantee program to the states to help provide financing for a larger number of small projects that would otherwise not be considered. So again, I thank our witnesses for being here this morning. I know you've all come from far places. I appreciate the perspectives that you will lend to the committee, and appreciate your time. With that,